Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of El Koki Otaku. Today with us we have a very special guest. He voices Haruka Sakura in Windbreaker. The ever hilarious best lizardman, Gabiru. In that time I got reincarnated as a slime. Ishigami and Kaguya-sama, Love is War. The First Kiss That Never Ends. A whole list of characters here. Ken Centipede, Eye Patch, the Black Reaper, One-Eyed Ghoul, Kaneki. And Heisei Sasako Sason, the Black Reaper, Sasaki. Oh, that's a mouthful. In Tokyo Ghoul, Karma, Red Demon, in Akabane, in Assassination. Karma, Red Dragon, Akabane, in Assassination, Classroom, second season, Goro and Darling in the Franks, and Natsuo Nanshan Fuji in Domestic Girlfriend. And I am out of breath because this special guest has a lot of characters, so please give it up for Austin Tindle.
Austin, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
Definitely, it is a big list. We spent a good amount of time just preparing the list, the rundown, because the list is so huge that I had to use Control-Find to get the character. It was so huge. So thank you so much, Austin. Let's start with one of the latest character, one of the latest series on Crunchyroll dub, and which really surprised me. One of the person watching it. Talking about your character, Haruka Sakura in Windbreakers. For those who haven't seen this interesting series, how would you describe it?
I don't know if this is cheating, but it's been described to me by fans as basically Tokyo Revengers but better.
Yes.
Now, I haven't seen Tokyo Revengers, so that's not my opinion. It's just the public's opinion. But it is it's a story about a young man who's trying to find his place in the world. He's a tsundere protagonist, which I think a lot of people were excited to have recently. So you see him really working through his own anger issues over his own probable childhood trauma, entering into a new city and a new school with the express purpose of beating up the toughest people in the school so that he can be the number one baddest fighter. And then you see that it comes from a place of possible isolation and hurt and a childhood that caused him to believe that he needed to only rely on himself. And the group of young men that he shows up hoping to beat up end up becoming a family to him that kind of teaches him some what might be described as positive masculinity and camaraderie that he hadn't experienced before in life. And the show is really interesting, I think, because it really takes its time kind of introducing the characters. It's got really amazing fight scenes. The fight animation is really, I think, what it's the kind of the flavor that keeps you going. But underneath that is like, as you often get in anime, it's stories about young men or young people who don't seem to have a lot of parental influence or adults in their lives, trying to figure it out, trying to figure themselves out, trying to work through their budding emotions.
I don't know if it is happening to you, but okay, I have to agree with the fan's description. It's very close to Tokyo Revengers. I'm not going to jump into the fire of it better or say. I leave that to the fans. You guys
those weren't my words.
Yeah,
I'm just a messenger.
Exactly. We're just messenger, and we're just relying on what we hear. Doesn't mean we don't have proof.
Right.
Doesn't mean that we don't have doubts neither. But also, so I was so in shock with the community acceptance in this series because we compare Tokyo Revengers and Windbreaker. In this case, Windbreaker, we have a community feeling where people are like so proud of this group. Which episode 1, I was like, what is going on here? Why people are so proud of their, I don't know, gang is the right word, or crew defend?
Crew is, I guess, a safer word, but they are a bit of I don't remember if they used the actual word gang in our English translation. But
it's not gang, but let's call it fighting guys, fighting group, problematic kids. But
it's gang in the 1980s warrior sense. There was much more colorful. There's teams of juvenile delinquents that fight each other and wear matching outfits.
Right, at least we don't have drugs, we don't have weapons, we don't have these underworld elements. Right. As a matter of fact, these guys are fighting to protect the community because, we don't see the police involved here. So they're like, hey, every time somebody comes and mess up with the lady who makes bread in the morning, they beat up that person. Somebody is assaulting or robbing somebody, they jump to defend that person. And or the person. So, would you expect... I never seen that element before in other series. Would you expect them to see this happening here?
No, I was totally surprised. And I try to keep myself somewhat ignorant. I don't try. I do it with ease, but it's almost better to not know what's coming. I have a lot of actor peers who are really aware of what shows are coming up and what they're all about. And I think for some people that's part of their process and that's very helpful. But for me, it's always better to be on my toes. So it was a real surprise to find out that this show was coming along and that I was being considered for a part in it. And I had just worked with the director not too long ago because we did Trigun Stampede in 2023, which was another huge role and opportunity. So I did a little bit of research about kind of what the universe is like, but then I try to not know too much about what's happening in the show before we record it, because then you're kind of you're fresher, you have more kind of an authentic in the moment response to the stimuli, and then hopefully that brings about a performance that is less calculated and more something that comes from my subconscious and then hopefully there's a bunch of happy accidents and at the end of the day, you're just trying to fulfill the objective of the character in any given moment, and respect the original performance and intention of the creators, the animators, and the Japanese voice actors. So a lot of it is kind of a Zen exercise in being present and sensitive and aware. At least for me, I think there are some people that are kind of more cerebral and intentional with the things that they do. But that's also kind of how I live my life, so it makes sense that that's how I work in the booth.
This series, just like Tokyo Revenger for surprise was very well accepted by female community, by girls. They're very fan of this series, even that's fighting boys club in the street. This one had the same taste. Very well accepted by all community, boys, girls, anybody, any person will love this kind of series because of everything. Great balance of fighting, drama, animation, good background story, everything. So check it out. But slowing down from the street battle to a isekai world, when you have one of the main character heroes of the world, talking about the greatest and unique Gabiru. In that time, I got reincarnated as a slime, which everybody we have to say, Gabiru. So, I think everybody at this point know about reincarnated as a slime. But let's talk about your experience dubbing Gabiru. Were you expecting to be this character, which is not the main, but have a very fan base?
No, I didn't think he was going to come back. I certainly didn't think he was going to be a big deal. And I have no idea how many fans there are. I have people that come up to me at conventions and stuff. But you're never really aware of like how big a fan base might be for a certain character. That character is really fun though. He kind of shows up as this low-level villain that you expect to get defeated in an episode or two and then never see again. But then every once in a while, we get these characters that, that go through a change and then end up becoming some subgroup of the main cast, and then they go from antagonistic to comedic relief. And I think I've seen that trope a few different times, and there's a few different characters I've kind of played that have gotten to go through a journey like that, which is always super interesting. In a lot of ways, that could be more fun than playing the protagonist, because there's more dynamic stuff you get to do, and you're not as responsible for carrying the show, so it's like less work, more reward almost. But that guy was really fun. I think Cliff Chapin was the director that cast me in it. And we really got to play with it. I think I've played a few different characters that kind of have this, just like Monoma from My Hero Academia. They have this false bravado, this kind of narcissistic, egotistic, presentational personality, but then you'll get hints that, like, deep down they're like a good guy and they want to do the right thing, but there's something in there that's deeply rooted in some type of like maybe insecurity. I mean, I try not to judge any character that I play, and anytime you're judging a character, there's going to be a degree of just you projecting your own mental state onto them. So maybe I'm just thinking about my own insecurity and false bravado. But that broad telegraphing that he gets to do as a character, it's a nice departure from some of the normal stuff you get stuck in with anime that can be very like kind of serious and goal oriented. But I love the theater camp energy. I always think of like a pretentious Shakespearean actor whenever I'm doing his lines. And I'm amazed that the show is still going on. I actually recorded for Gabiru like 2 weeks ago. And it's been years now. It's crazy to see him coming back. And it's always a joy. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a Funko Pop. What? But I think it's funny watching his evolution, and then if you see how he evolves, and the animation is ridiculous too, because he changes in size and form so often, and they don't really comment on it. Like sometimes he has wings, and other times he doesn't. So it's like, are those detachable? Does he leave them at home sometimes? But like, you get to see him evolve into this higher being. But then he still retains his lizard form, and then his sister evolves too, and she gets to go like full humanoid.
Waifu.
Yeah.
Which we're like, wait, see, let's not question this, because we would like to know why, but sure, because also we would like to see husbandos here. And I feel like Gabiru would be a great husbando, but they went with the lizard form. I mean, maybe some people like lizards.
Some people are into it, you know. He's certainly hard to match Flap with, too, because he's got a lizard beak. So sometimes there's sounds we make that logically won't really be made by a mouth that looks like that. So we try to make it work.
Definitely. And moving on to another character, which not the main character of the series, but is told everybody hard with the story. Talking about you, Ishigami, in Kaguya-sama, Love is War. And we had the whole series, season 1, season 2, and the movie the first kiss that never ends, which is very dramatic for me. The title.
Yeah. It's a very dramatic show.
Let's describe this series for those who haven't tried seeing yet. Kaguya-sama Lovely War. How would you describe this show?
It's a coming of age high school romantic comedy. But it's hard to say if it's like if it deals more in the romance and pathos than it does in the comedy. Because I think the show does an impressive job of like having these really silly moments, while also like breaking into these like very serious emotions for what I think is a universal experience for people coming of age, high school students trying to figure out love and their own identity and their own like place in social hierarchy. And there's so many sweet moments about like friendship, I guess you could say. It's so interesting, you know. Ishigami is this side character, this kind of more background character that doesn't really show up too much in the first season, comes back in the second season. And then season 2, episode 11, he's got this whole thing that like reveals his background and becomes very, very emotional. Like, didn't see any of that coming. I talked to a lot of fans about that character in specific, and I think he speaks to like a certain human experience that maybe doesn't get highlighted very much in a noble way in a lot of media. You know, he has this kind of like otaku shut-in kind of you know, introverted, I don't want to say nerdiness, but like he's introduced as a certain character trope, and then we get a backstory that really increases the depth of the character and humanizes him in a way, and then you start to realize that like this guy that like might be perceived as weird or gross or shut in is bearing this huge burden. I don't want to spoil the details too much, but you realize like
it's been released a while ago already.
Well,
6 months.
I also don't want to misremember the details, but
I would more than happy to.
You find out that he has this reputation of being this oddball because of rumors that were spread about him from a previous high school.
Yes,
and it was rumors that he allowed to persist because he was defending the honor of one of the girl students. So like he has this very noble sacrifice that he makes and this burden that he bears. And so there's something, you know, he's something idealized about how he interacts with the world, which maybe justifies this like shut in, like, I want to die, so I'm going home. Like he bears the burden of his own pain, but it's like he carries on because of the knowledge that he does the right thing. And then what seeps out is the weird kind of resentments and insecurities. But such an interesting character. And then the relationship you see that he has that develops with Kaguya, which you don't really expect, but they end up becoming like these intimate friends in very certain ways, and they have these very emotional conversations, like alone in the bathroom. And in some ways, I think she ends up having a bond with him that is not necessarily more intimate, but unique and different from the bond that she has with the class president. And I think it's cool to see that in some of these main characters, and especially like across, you know, genders and sexual orientations, where you can see two people that develop this platonic and intimate relationship outside of the pursuit of romance, which tends to be the central theme of the show. It would be interesting to see. I mean, I know the manga's finishing up, and after the movie happened, maybe there could be another season, but they've pretty much like are pushing to a close. There's in the manga some stuff happens between him and another student where you kind of see his romance start to blossom. It would be interesting to see if they played that out.
Please, we need that. I mean, I'm one of those fans like, please bring it home already. Because like
I think one of the things that made that dub so good was really the director Morgan Le Ray, who I've known for like almost 2 decades, and we did theater back in the day before either one of us got into voice acting. So she's a good friend, and there's a comfortability and a camaraderie there, and she really has a sense of play. So, and I think you can kind of hear that in the performances of all the actors in the show. She really let them push the boundaries of what their instincts are, because a lot of times we're under rigid guidelines, and some directors really want to hear you just recreate the original performance, like, and match inflection but Americanize it. Which, you know, maybe that has its place, but it's always fun to get kind of crazy with it. And I think this show and this genre justifies it. But like if you listen to the narrator in the original Jay, he's pretty straightforward. And Morgan hit up Ian Sinclair, he's done a ton of stuff. And he's got a very wide range, and she was like, go nuts, play with it, do what you want to do. And you can really hear that in the performance. I think a lot of people enjoyed it. And I also think it's one of the things that like is important to me and that I find exciting and interesting, because, you know, I've been preaching this a lot lately, but with the invention of AI, like they already have technology that could potentially just convert the original Jay's performance. It could technically take our job, which I would prefer that didn't happen. But what I would like to see, and what I think is there and people are appreciating, is that there is an American industry with its own kind of artistic instincts that will add a layer to make this a unique thing, so that you're not just watching the recreation of a performance, but you're watching a different interpretation that's going to bring its own value and own discoveries. So as much as I can bend a performance and get away with kind of putting some of my own stuff on it, I try to sneak that in there as much as possible. And yeah, Kaguya is one of those where we kind of got away with that a little bit.
I do want to backtrack a little bit because I want to compare the characters. Having Gabiru and then you Ishigami, two, I'm going to say, diametrically opposed characters, because in terms of personality and how they speak and everything, they're very far apart. Which, out of those two, because they each have their own bang, but out of those two, which one would you say would have been like the most challenging to voice because of their performance?
Gabiru is a million times more challenging. I mean, it's hard to say. There are both moments between both of them that are more difficult. Gabiru, number one, is just more vocally strenuous. So like I really got to be on my game when I come into the booth for that. And I blow out my voice all the time, and especially that higher register that I have kind of burned through in my 30s. It can go away a lot more easily. So, like, talking up here all the time, that can be a lot trickier to do in the morning. You got to prepare for it. And he's screaming the whole time. He's like, I have some! All of that stuff, like, all this right here, it ends up becoming a big focus of my day-to-day and my career these days. It used to be I'm just so nervous about doing a good job, and now it's like keeping my vocal cords alive. But Ishigami has some more emotional moments, and he also has some intense monologues that require some dexterity. But for the most part, he's just, this is really dumb and I want to leave. And it's a lot of side lines that are little quippier, just less vocally taxing, and somewhat more accessible. I don't have to think about it as much. Whereas Gabiru, we're always trying to like push it to the next degree to figure out what's going to make this the funniest. Different directing styles too, which can, you know, like with Ishigami and Morgan, she would just let it be whatever it was instead of like kind of having some specific visions. So I got away with no, hopefully no directors watch this. I love working with all of them equally. But sure, she and I had this rapport too, and so she let me get away with more stuff. That was also, we recorded the beginning of Slime, like all the first season Gabiru stuff. That was recorded during the pandemic. And so that was all in my closet. Wait. Hold on. No, I'm getting this backwards. Slime was originally pre-pandemic, and Kaguya-sama was during the pandemic. So all the Ishigami stuff was like in a closet in my house, which is a little bit more relaxing. There was less stuff going on, so it was kind of easier to focus on and tackle that. I don't remember when Slime started, but it started pre-pandemic. I think it started when we were in the old building and it was still Funimation. So that was actually, gosh, that was a while ago.
Kaguya-sama was around the 2022, the first airing from January.
Yeah.
April 2022, so it might be on that time frame. But let's talk about your career, because I feel like I've been touching many preview here. So you mentioned you start first doing theatrical, but before going into dubbing. But how did you end up in the arts?
I kind of fell into it. I did theater in high school, and then I was doing theater in college. But I was actually going to college for electrical engineering. And I was there on an academic scholarship, so I only had 8 free semesters. And then by that last semester, I had been doing so much like extracurricular theater. And it was an engineering school, so they didn't have much of a theater degree. I just knew that I like had to get out of there with the degree. I was missing like 30 credit hours because the electrical engineering degree was like 120 credit hours, and then the arts and performance degree that I got was only like 90 credit hours. So I got cast as Romeo in a local Romeo and Juliet production. And then I went to my counselor and I was like, what can we do? And so I switched majors at the last minute, probably pissed off the state of Texas because they invited me specifically to be an engineer so that I would work at IT, Texas Instruments, TI. Which is what my roommate and a lot of my classmates did. And they all make much more money than me now. But, I squeezed out at the last seconds, and I had like 18 credit hours left and not enough classes that I could take. So I convinced them to let me do independent study. And what was it? It was, I wrote a proposal for 3 different classes that were each going to be 6 credit hours. And I got it approved by the counselor. They let me do my own writing class, acting class, and directing class. And then I wrote a one-man show and performed it. And then that was the class. That was it. So I squeezed out with that degree. And then after college, I did this show while I was in college called 'Tis Pity She Was a Whore. I played Sir Ronzo. It was directed by Raphael Perry, who is the artistic director at Shakespeare Dallas. And after I got out of college, I managed to get in with them because I had worked with him, and he was like, come on out. And I ended up playing I was Balthazar in their Romeo and Juliet, which was a little blow to the ego because I went from playing Romeo to playing like this very small part that supports Romeo. And I remember doing scenes with the guy that played Romeo. His name's Montgomery Sutton. And like, I was like, there was this, they squeezed Balthazar into multiple different characters. So I was like all these tiny people in the show, like the guy that comes to tell Romeo that Juliet's dead. And I remember working on that scene with him, and like I already had all his lines memorized, so I was like cueing him on lines, and it was I don't think he found that charming. But it was an interesting show. I had to shave my head into a mohawk, and I had to learn how to juggle pool balls because it was like this modern day kind of punk version. So I had to like make tattoos. Yeah, I was like on stage every night juggling pool balls, which like, I don't know if you've juggled before, but that's one of the more painful things to try to juggle, because if you mess up, it real well. And there was it was a raked stage too, so there's this big circular platform. So if I screwed up, like those balls would start rolling towards the audience.
And they're heavy.
We never hurt anyone. I think there was only once or twice where I dropped the ball and somebody was able to pick it up for me and keep it going. But
why they hate you so much?
I don't know. That was my job. That's what I was there for. I also got thrown around a lot. There was a lot of stage combat, and I was a spry one back in the day, so I did a lot of like getting pushed downstairs and stuff. I did a lot of movement-based theater early on, a lot of avant-garde stuff. So voice acting was like not on my radar at all. But that led to me getting a day job as I started off as the secretary of this nonprofit. We raised money for an arts magnet school. We were called the advisory board of Booker T. Washington High School. Really amazing program, big school. We would raise like millions of dollars every year, and these kids are like some of the most talented artists in the country, and they go on to do amazing things. Erykah Badu went to our school. Norah Jones went to our school. Branford Marsalis went to our school, and his quartet is like recorded one of my favorite songs, Again Never, from the Mo Better Blues album. Go check it out. It's beautiful. But anyway, so I was like, I got injected into the arts community in Dallas, and then I spent about a decade just doing any live theater that I could. You know, there's a big commercial industrial market in Dallas. So eventually I did a show called 1 in 3 that was also run by a nonprofit. And that led to me getting an agent because somebody showed up and saw me. Eventually that agent fired me, but through that agent, I got my foot in the door at Funimation. They got me my first audition. And so the first few auditions didn't go that well, but it went well enough that they brought me back as just a background actor. They have these sessions called Wallace sessions where they'll bring in 4 guys at once and just have you talk over each other to do background noises, and then maybe you'll do some bit parts like the news reporter on the TV that talks for 2 seconds, stuff like that. But it's a real opportunity to get in the booth with some of these directors, because really getting a job is not necessarily about being perfect for the role as much as it's about like being someone that these people want to be in a room with for 8 hours. So you know, just being the best first date version of yourself when you walk into these new settings is the best advice I can give people. But eventually I got my first solo session. Ian Sinclair brought me in for Terrorist number 2 in season 2 of Black Butler. In this 1 episode arc, I'm this terrorist that gets thrown out the window. And then after that, the next kind of solo thing I remember is Tyler Walker cast me in Fairy Tale as Alzack Connell. So my first character with a name. And that went well enough that he eventually cast me as Ayumu Aikawa in Is This a Zombie? And that was my first leading role. which was a huge learning experience. I really didn't know what I was doing. I remember how nerve-wracking just like narrative monologues were, because you get in the booth and at first you get used to just focusing on matching flaps and matching rhythm. You get so honed in on using that as a guide to make decisions about your line readings that when you suddenly have a giant monologue that's off screen and there's no flaps involved, you kind of forget how to be an actor at first, or at least I did. And you can kind of hear it in that show if you go listen to it. I mean, you'll enjoy it. It's great. But it was certainly a learning experience. I mean, I've had an evolution of those. I've been really lucky that I've had a fair amount of opportunities to play different types of characters. And I think every year I'm learning something new, or at least adapting and changing my opinions and style about how things should be performed. So yeah, I don't know. That's basically how I got into voice acting. It was kind of an accident.
What an accident. You just mentioned that your first character was Alzack Connell from Fairy Tail.
Yeah.
With a name. Were you expecting that 11 years later still having on air?
No. It just came back. It was super weird. I came in and had like 2 lines. I don't think they had a reference line for me. So I kind of had to, luckily I kind of remember what it sounded like. And I don't modulate my voice that much in a show unless like I have to. So it's not hard to get back into most characters. But yeah, it was super weird seeing him again. I mean, I welcome it. Please book me for anything.
I think that one of the greatest new latest we have in the anime, because background story Fairy Tail have 7 arcs. So see here, the first one in 2011, and they surprised us. I thought it was just a live rumor that we'll make it back with the 100-year quest, and I was like, it's too beautiful to be true. And suddenly it's here, so I'm like, wow, it's really happening. And I had to go back to review the cast, because we're talking about 13 years here. So like, are we speaking about the same cast? And for my surprise, I think almost all of them are the same from the original cast, which is surprising. Yeah. And talking about legacy character, you have a character very well loved and great emotion. Talking about Ken and Kaneki in Tokyo Ghoul. For those who are fan of anime from the old school, the emo age. For those
it just had its 10th anniversary. Isn't that crazy?
It is. I mean, I think at this point, most people know about Tokyo Ghoul, the background. But I was experiencing doing this character, being the main character, which have a very weird journey, because it was not a flatline story. It was not even exponential. It was like all around the places how the story developed.
Yeah, there's a lot of love-hate about how the show overall went down. You know, I think season 1 is pretty much universally enjoyed. I think that drew everyone in. And then, of course, you know, the intro music to season 1 is so iconic. I think that and the imagery ends up being something that keeps it alive in people's minds and kind of has kept it being introduced to new fans. And then you get to season 2, Route A, and they decided to go away from the manga and do their own storytelling. And then there was an audience backlash from that. I think people got so invested in how the storyline went. And season 1 that followed the manga pretty well, that the manga lovers got pretty disappointed that it went a different direction. I still speak to some people who love Route A. And then Tokyo Ghoul the last 24 episodes, they like course corrected a bit, so they kind of retconned some of the things that happened in season 2, and then they skipped a ton of storytelling. There's some really important things that happened that they just glossed over. And they took like 120 chapters and tried to shove them in 24 episodes. And I think some of it was a budgeting issue. The studios and the animators and the director were moving on to other projects. So I think they made this executive decision to just, we want to get to the end of this story. And if you haven't read the manga, those last 24 episodes are not going to make a lot of sense. It's kind of like the Harry Potter movie adaptations, except way more extreme, because like they don't have time to do things, they change things, so they squeeze some characters together, barely mention other characters that are actually huge in the manga. And at the end of the day, these animes mostly serve as advertisements for the manga. That's the majority of where the income is coming from. So I think there was a ideology that kind of led them to just want to crank this thing out as best they could. So I end up explaining that at most conventions, because there are some people that will come to me and be like, was that you in the last season? What was going on? Why is everything different? I'm so confused. And then there's other people that just go along with it. I think getting to the end of the story is kind of an important thing, because it is the story of this traumatic journey of a young person, and getting to the end of it, like, we kind of see the healing process a little bit. It's like if you walk away from that story mid-season 2, it's pretty dark. It's a dark life lesson. But I remember there was so much controversy. I was getting so much fan information about an announcement that was taking place this year, because it was the 10th year anniversary, and they released this advertisement that was like, we're going to announce something big on July 3rd. And I remember freaking out, thinking like, are we going to reboot this? Is it going to be a new story? I was a little bit scared about having to come back and maybe even redo season 1, because like, I'm happy with, I always want to go back and make things better, but there's a lot of intense things that happen in that show that my voice doesn't necessarily want to go through again. I certainly will if they pay me to. But it was all this worry and concern for nothing, because July 3rd came, and it turned out the announcement was that they're opening a museum in Tokyo, just about Tokyo Ghoul, which I think is super interesting. And if it brings more fans to the franchise, that's ultimately good. And who knows, maybe it could lead to them writing more for this universe, which I would love to see. I'd love to see an older Kaneki mentor, like mentoring a new main character. I think that could be really interesting. Or just start at season 2 and retell that stuff. But let's leave season 1 alone. But yeah, it's so interesting to see that they've opened an art museum, and I think that kind of speaks to, again, like, one of the things that makes that show still powerful and relevant is this very intense imagery. I've seen it. It's popular in the tattoo community and the Hot Topic stores in America, and it's always super exciting to see the merchandise anywhere. But it lends itself to interesting art. There's so many people making cool art. I get paintings and other posters and stuff that people have created and merchandise, and I'm always excited to get it. And there's so many beautiful things that are coming from it. And it's so interesting to hear people's stories about how the show affected them, especially after a decade now. So I get a lot of people in their mid-20s who come to me and they're like, this was my first anime. I was a teenager. I was a young teenager, and it helped me get through something. So a lot of my fan interactions kind of end up being talking about that. Personally in my own life, my experience of recording that, the 4 years that I spent recording it, I mean, there was a year break in between where we didn't know if it was going to come back. But it was about 4 years from beginning to end. And my life changed dramatically through that process. I was like living in my girlfriend's van when I first got booked that. And then, by the end of it, I had started going to conventions and like, I still don't believe that this career is going to last, but I was like certainly in a different place in my life. So there's something cathartic about the experience. So yeah, it's a special thing, I think.
And we had the honor to also record with Brina Valencia, which is the voice of Toka, and she told us so many beautiful stories that it will never cross my mind that those beautiful stories between the crew and the cast were happening at the same time you guys were recording.
Oh yeah,
which is like, damn, beautiful stories behind the dark series that you were recording. Because Tokyo Ghoul, I have to confess, I think it was one of my first gore anime that I started watching, and so I was kind of rookie in this world without reading the manga. And I'm one of those person that I love everything how it went. Confess, not perfect love, because like what you're saying, the season 1 was interesting till the centipede in the ear, which still traumatized me. Then we have Route A, which for me was like, it's getting darkest as hell. I liking this. Like we're seeing the blood running finally, and Tokyo Ghoul Re, it gave me a hard time to start watching it, but at the end I was like, I think it makes sense. I have to suffer under watching those first episodes, so now everything is connected. So I'm like, perfect. It worth it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm a big fan of that roller coaster.
I think if you take it for what it is and don't need all the questions answered, there is something interesting about how they decided to unfold Tokyo Ghoul Re, because if you watch the manga, you see this fight between Kaneki and Arima where I think I said his name right, where he like Wolverine style destroys Kaneki to such a degree that like a speck of him is left and he has to regenerate his entire body, and experiences this amnesia, and then basically gets brainwashed by the CCG to start working for them. And instead of informing us that, we are dropped in immediately into what like metaphorically could look like, if this whole thing is kind of a metaphor for trauma in general, and like especially like complex PTSD, what it can do to a young brain. And then we see him as a young adult, and now suddenly we're injected into the amnesiac dream. It's almost like the Nexus in Star Trek, if you know what I'm talking about, where the movie that had Picard and Kirk at the same time, and one of them gets whisked away and he's just reliving his favorite day of his life. But it's like this, it's this protective layer that his consciousness is living in because he can't deal with the reality of the pain and trauma that Kaneki went through, but it's hiding in the back of his subconscious, waiting to come out. And then there's all these things that change, like, all of a sudden Kaneki or Heisei is, he has a family. He has an entire group of people that he lives with, that he's cooking food for, and now suddenly they have this technology or this explanation as to why he's able to eat human food again. So all these factors that were huge pieces of trauma for him have been hidden away. It's like he's living in a fantasy. And then, you hope to think that the journey of those 24 episodes is him. Is the reintegration process that someone has to do when they do the difficult trauma work, which is addressing those hidden memories, looking at them from an adult perspective, and protecting and comforting the inner child from your adult perspective. And I mean, I don't want to psychoanalyze it too much, but I think there's something universal about this story, and you can pull this from so many different animes. It just so happens that I'm more intimately involved with this one, so I can speak on it more. That's why I think it's so kind of important, if this thing speaks to you, to just get to the end of the episode, get to the end of the last episode, where he kind of like has this monologue of taking on the responsibility of protecting your inner child, being the person that you are based on the experiences that you have, making informed decisions moving forward with the versions of yourself that are that you are not hiding away from. And there's one scene in Tokyo Ghoul that was like super tricky to record, but like I've gotten good feedback, so I hope it speaks well. But there's a moment where he's once again dissociated inside of his brain, and we see like 6 versions of him all trying to like come together to lift him up. I mean, I can get, I can get emotional like just talking about it. I think there's something that's very kind of universal of it.
It is. And to wrap it up, one of the last anime I want to touch today, getting emotional, one of your characters that he was a pain in drama, but important, talking about Karma, Akabane, also known as Thread Demon, in the Assassination Classroom, with nobody is ready for that ending. That series, last episode.
I know. They really trick you on that one. Karma's one of my favorite characters for sure. It's probably always going to be top 5. I wish there was more of him. And he's in season 1 and season 2, so he shows up in like episode 3 of season 1. And he's introduced in such a cool way. I love characters like that, who just at the end of the episode, we get this cutaway. And we hear him going, "I've always wanted to kill myself a teacher." The funny thing about that is we recorded that before simuldubs were a thing. So nowadays in the industry, you get like 10 days to record an episode. You don't really know what the next episode's going to be about. Sometimes you get some info, but sometimes you have no idea what's going on. Sometimes the director has no idea what's going on. And whatever decisions you make, they have to take place in the moment. You figure out the voice in a few minutes, and then every line you have 30 to 45 seconds to get a good line reading and spit it out. And then whatever you get done, that's going to be on the internet in 10 days. Which, like, cool for there being more content, and, like, we like working, but it can be tricky, because if you make a mistake, or if you don't really get it the way you want it, there's nothing you can do about it. But with Assassination Classroom, that was straight to DVD. And I remember Joel McDonald was the guy that cast me. And I think Afia Yu is assistant directing. So I was working with both of them. And Joel's a very interesting, he's an awesome director, but he very much like puts the responsibility on you to and he trusts you as an actor, which is a great director to have. But it also means like you should be like on your toes, making informed decisions. But anyway, like I was trying to figure out a voice for Karma, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but for the first like 3 episodes that we recorded, I had this like obnoxious, like, like this, I'm not even gonna be able to find it again, but it was like almost like a Dennis the Menace, just like, I'm a little troublemaker, what are you gonna do about it? But it was just this bratty kind of annoying voice. And somewhere around the like 4th or 5th episode, we were in the middle of it, and some of the monologues and lines are coming out, and you're starting to realize like this guy holds his cards close to his chest. He's very cool-headed. We don't really see him lose his temper that often, except when you see him suddenly get, jagged teeth. But all of a sudden, it was like, actually, he's a smooth guy. This is back at the throat. I'm trying to piss you off. I'm not the one getting pissed off. I don't know what you're talking about. So, like, we kind of figured out the mouth placement, the reverberation placement of where this guy lives. And luckily, like, Afia and Joel went along with it. And luckily I worked usually pretty efficiently. So they estimate how much time it's going to take you to record something, and like you better get it done in that time or less. And luckily we had enough time that we were able to squeeze in going back and re-recording single thing I had done up to that point. And then nobody saw the original stuff. But if it had happened today, we would have just been stuck with that voice. And honestly, like, I shouldn't point this out or say this, but like, there's shows these days. I've even like, I won't be specific, but we'll get notes from producers or even licensors from Japan that might have their opinions about where voices live and stuff. And like, there's some shows where if you really pay attention, like, somebody's voice might sound completely different one episode, and then the next episode, it's like they figured out what they wanted it to be, and it's going to be this now. And we all just kind of
pretend
work with it. There's so much content now. You're just trying to keep up with all the stuff coming out.
That's true. That's so true. Let me, before we wrap it up, trying to get some classified information here. That last episode, like I mentioned, it was very hard to watch because everybody cried. Like, if I want to watch my eyes and when I need tears, I will just play that episode. I'm going to cry like from the beginning. Do you know, for you guys, the cast, what was it just normal to record it, or do you know there was any feelings, any tears involved in the studio? Because that episode was a stab to our heart.
Yeah. No, everybody was crying in the booth. We all were. And you know, it's our job to not force out tears, but to sensitize ourselves to stimuli. So it's not uncommon to cry in the booth at certain moments. And there's even been shows where, like, I did this show called My Roommate is a Cat, and there was something so emotionally available about it that I kept connecting with, that I was like crying before lines that like didn't call for it. The director would have to be like, you should calm that down a little bit. It doesn't always serve you as an actor to allow that to happen. But I've talked to multiple cast members, and everybody says like, yeah, I was like in it. It's such a sweet moment. And I mean, for me as Karma, I was really crying because I wasn't the one that got to kill him, and that was really upsetting. I was student number one. I'm the best assassin in the class. Like, this should have been my kill. But you know, aside from the crying that took place, that was, you know, it does take something to get there. The most difficult thing about that damn episode was they sing "Happy Birthday" to him, but if you'll listen to it, partially for copyright reasons, they don't use the happy birthday rhythm. It's a different rhythm. We all have to be in perfect unison. I'm not a very good singer, so I was already really nervous about it. Luckily, like, I'm in the background, so you can't really hear me. But it was like, happy birthday, Sensei-san. It was like almost happy birthday, but the melody and rhythm had changed slightly. And I found that very difficult to get through.
Wait, you're telling me a Universal song that song's copyrighted?
Yeah, I don't know if it still is, but the Happy Birthday song has been copyrighted for a long time, and I think recently that might have changed. But there's a lot of sitcoms that have made jokes about this, and if you hear it on TV, especially from anything from the 80s, 90s, or early 2000s, if you're hearing the normal song, somebody had to pay for that. And then there's a ton of shows where you'll hear them do something slightly different to get away with it.
Don't go too far. Christmas season, Jose Feliciano, Feliz Navidad. Feliz. Yeah. That's a copyright song. How the freaking hell?
Okay, but that dude's still alive.
It's Merry Christmas.
What's that other song you guys sing? Las manitas que canta. What is that?
Las mañanitas.
Estas son las mañanitas las que cantan.
Que cantaba el rey David. Y hoy por ser día de tu santo y lo cantaban a ti. Despierta, mi bien, despierta. Mira que ya amaneció y los pajaritos cantan. La luna ya se metió. Hey, look at that.
I just got a copyright notification. Well, Austin, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful night talking with you.
Yeah, this
For
was great.
those who are considering the voice acting, any advice for the fans? Any words of advice?
One advice I would give you is go buy Joel McDonald's book. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Getting In. He's a friend of mine, but he's also the casting director at Gearbox and has a lot of really good knowledge for just basic ideas about the minutia of what you might do to get into the industry. There's also D. Bradley Baker has a website called, I think it's called iwannabeavoiceactor.com. Google that, Google D. Bradley Baker, and he breaks down the just really boring kind of practical things you might do to try to intentionally get in. It's always hard for me to give people advice because, I was at the right place at the right time in 2008. I was studying to be an actor in every way I could, and I was inside an industry that allowed me opportunities. They say that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So it's important to work on your craft like it's a lifestyle, like it's an athletic sport, because it is. You're training internal muscles and you're creating muscle memory for accessing emotions subconsciously, getting as much training as you can. I got a lot of training from Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts. There's a woman named Tina Packer that does amazing work over there. She's also a contemporary with a woman named Kristen Linklater. There's a book called Freeing the Natural Voice, written by Kristen Linklater. It's filled with exercises for helping you drop into your body. And there are bad habits that people can learn as actors, especially if you jump right into the booth and you think that voice acting is something different than acting is. But really, acting is one of the oldest professions. There's a huge tradition behind it. There's a wealth of knowledge that you should educate yourself on if you want to be the best version of yourself. And it's a lifestyle. It's something I take very seriously as an art form. And it's us in the West. We get so product oriented that we think the only reason we should invest in learning about these skills is if it results in financial success, or that the definition of success is having something that's been commercially recognized, when really it's an art form because it's about the process over the product, because the process of learning to tell stories, learning about yourself and how you interact in these stories, and telling these stories in a community, we've already learned has huge psychological benefits. And I mean, theater, therapy, theology, there's something in the root of that. Like, they don't all technically have the same root word, because I think some of these are Greek and some of them are, but theos, meaning God, or self-awareness, the journey inward. It's an art form that helps accelerate consciousness and human evolution. So if you're going to get into it, make sure that it's a compulsion that you're obsessed with, and that you're not kind of swayed by the beauty of where the industry is right now. Because the industry is going to change. Whatever the new big thing for actors is, it might not be voice acting. Like, that's the good gig right now, but I have no idea. I'm not trying to discourage you, but one of my greatest teachers said, if there's anything else you can go do that. But if you're someone who every single day has this yearning to participate in telling stories, then find a community, find a tribe, work at this every day. And there's online resources out there. And over a long enough period of time, pretty much everybody's going to get the same number of opportunities. Supposedly, these are all whatever. These are all little aphorisms that have been thrown at me over the years. Hopefully some of it sticks. But there's, all roads lead to Mecca. There's no one right way to do this. And it is a marathon and not a sprint. And get a side hustle, because you're going to need it.
Before we go, I was so curious about that birthday song. So the copyright.
Did you Google it?
Yes, the copyright expired on June 28th, 2016. And then
Whoa, I'm checking about right. Okay.
And then the last aired episode for Assassination Classroom was June 30th, so 2 days later.
That's hilarious. That was okay, but back when it was like, you said that was, well, I guess that was the first release in Japan.
Right, I was thinking about that. The dub or the
It
release?
should have been legal by then for us then, because we
It would. So then the thing is, it does say that then the English dub in Adult Swim, because this is something I don't understand, is it says first, the simulcast by Funimation began releasing the broadcast dub version from February 10th, 2016. But then later, like if you scroll down, it'll talk about Adult Swim Toonami and then English dub again. But then it'll have the air dates for 2020 until 2022.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it's because we recorded it before simuldub was a thing. So we had recorded it like a year or two before. And then it went to DVD and then they streamed it. So I wonder if we ended up recording before that date. And then it takes a while. Back in the day when we did straight to DVD, you would record a show. You would have like 90 hours on it over the span of like a couple weeks. And then you wouldn't hear about it for like a year or a year and a half. And then they would call you out of nowhere and be like, come do DVD commentary for this thing you don't remember.
That's interesting.
That makes sense.
Social media, Austin, where people can follow you? To those who haven't followed you yet.
So I'm trying to do more social media stuff. Getting over my my introversion, but mostly on Instagram and Twitter at Austin Tindle. You can check me out on TikTok at Austin Tindle. I haven't been posting too much, but I repost a lot, and some of those are quality. But I'm trying to post more. I do have a YouTube channel that I don't really do anything with, which is also, I think, at Austin Tindle. But I am a part of a comedy troupe along with Eric Vale, who plays Shigaraki in My Hero and Sanji in One Piece and Trunks in Dragon Ball. So it's led by he and his wife. We're called the Folding Chairs Comedy Troupe. Caitlin Barr is another voice actor that is on our troupe. I don't remember any characters that she's ever done, but she's super amazing and famous and stuff. But we have a YouTube channel called the Folding Chairs Comedy Troupe. You have to type all that in, or it's just going to bring up videos of chairs. And if you go and check it out, be sure to check out the video called Groundhog Dade. It's Groundhog, D-A-Y''D. That's the first sketch that I wrote. I'm in other sketches, but go watch that one first. And then there's another sketch called Gang Gang, which I wrote, which might require some explanation, but just watch it. It's good. And we do live shows, but we also have a TikTok, same name. And yeah, we're trying to spit out more content and get more shows going. So be sure to check us out.
And we make it easy for you guys. You cannot find the website. Just go down to the description of this video, expand the description. Right over there, you're going to find the links to all this website that Austin just mentioned. Only one click, you just land to the page.
We've only got like 640 subscribers. We need more people.
Yes, guys, I have no clue how much important the subscribers are. And because we're talking about subscribers, we humbly ask you guys for your subscribe. I can share also in our channel, Ekokyo Otaku, and Austin channels too, because they help us so much to fight against the everyday algorithms find that it changes every week. Thanks to YouTube, and also all our social media, such like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, whatever the next social media show up next week. So, Austin, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, this was great. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we will see you in the next episode. Sayonara!